Okay, the place where I'm sitting right now, the place where we're sitting is the place where I pastor and also the place where I grew up. I grew up next door to this building, Union Springs Missionary Baptist Church in Talladega, Alabama. I've been pastoring here since August 3rd, 2014. And I preached my first sermon, my first public sermon that God gave me in March of 2011, right here in this sanctuary. So I'm also married. My wife's name is Valerie. We have 3 children, 2 sons and a daughter, and we have 4 grandchildren, which we have 3 boys and 1 little girl. So that pretty much sums up my situation, my immediate family. My parents are still with us. I have a brother and 2 sisters, and a whole lot of other family members that we love. Oh, I've got a lot of influences in my life, I've got to tell you. But I want to go back to where it started. Growing up, my parents made sure education was important to us. So during the summer, they gave us workbooks. I don't know if you may remember, but there were little white workbooks, had a picture of a boy, distorted picture of a boy on the front of it. And oftentimes these workbooks had different grade levels on each of the books. My parents bought those for me and my brother and my sisters, and every summer we worked on these. This is what we did. Of course, we were going to go outside and play, but we had to get that work in. Well, my mom did something else. We had, my father purchased a library of encyclopedias, and it had 2 thick dictionaries. And I can remember that the dictionary that began with A, thick dictionary about like this, it had spelling lists at the front of that particular dictionary. And those spelling lists were grade specific. So what my mom told me to do is that I had to learn the words that were according to my grade. She'd come home, she'd give me a spelling test, and I would spell them. Then she didn't say, good, let's stop. She actually went to the next grade level. And every day that I mastered grade levels, I had to learn the next grade level. And so I have to credit my parents with giving me vocabulary, giving me a passion for words. Because while I was learning those words, I also went through the dictionary to find out what words meant that I didn't know, because I didn't like spelling words that I had no earthly idea what they meant. So I have to start there, beginning to thank God, who is my divine inspiration, but thank God for my parents who definitely gave me that particular ethic, that belief system, that vocabulary that is so much a part of who I am. Why did I write the book? Well, when the pandemic hit, there were a lot of different reflections that were going on in my spirit. I wanted to teach everything, I wanted to preach everything, and I just couldn't get it out at once. But we did study a lot. We did teach and preach on a lot of the things that the Lord was sharing with me in the midst of the pandemic. And, you know, I thought that it was just going to stay there at sermon form until it was the semester that I was supposed to be graduating, receiving my Master's of Divinity at Russian Springs School of Theology. And the assignment was given to me to write a 20-page thesis on the pandemic's effects on the church. Well, I had already been reflecting on that, and it gave me an opportunity to pour out a lot of the things that were put in my heart and in my spirit. And I said, if I'm going to type 20 pages, then I might as well make it a book and share that information with as many people as possible. My aim for this book, honestly, is to get the word out. You know, Honestly, I personally don't expect for it to be a New York Times bestseller. You know, it's my first writing. It's a small book, but the main purpose for writing the book, the ends that I'm looking for, is that the word gets into the hands of as many people as possible. If so be that the words that are in that book are true, and these are things that are divinely inspired by the pandemic, things that God has given us. My goal is to make sure that the believer gets to read these reflections so that we don't go backward to where we were before the pandemic hit. The pandemic, what we have learned, what I've learned from the pandemic has made me a better person. But if we don't implement the things that we have learned, then we're back to square one. Okay, one thing that I can leave for the viewers and for my readers, let me turn to them. Let me turn to you. Romans 8:28 says, and we know that all things work together for good to them who love God, to them who are called according to his purpose. I know that going through the pandemic, we've lost people, we've lost things that we cannot replace. And just throw it all on God and say, well, God will be your husband, God will be your uncle, and this and that. You know, we know this, but at the same time, those person-to-person relationships are so special to us. So, no, you can't place them, even though God is greater than all of us. You know what I mean? But even in this, even in the midst of all the loss that we've experienced, God has a plan to bring us into blessing. God never brings curse on his children and allows curse to just wipe us out. If God allows evil, if he allows bad things to happen, then he's going to turn it around for your good. I'm not just speaking cliche. There is always a blessing in the storm. When you think about the early church, this is nothing new to God. The early church experienced a pandemic called persecution. And there are still people who are in other countries who are being persecuted. But the church in the book of Acts was persecuted to the point where people they had to leave their towns. They had to leave their cities, you know. But the Bible says that everywhere they went preaching. That's the blessing. That's the blessing. You'll find that in the book. But who we are today is attributed to the persecution that they went through, the death that they experienced, the storm that was over their head. God brought blessing from that storm. There were people dying then just like there are now. Matter of fact, there might have been more dying then. I don't know the numbers, but all I'm trying to tell you, and I'm done, is that God always brings his children to an expected end. He's always going to turn your situation around for your good. Weeping may endure for a night, but joy comes in the morning.